वाविव संपृक्तौ वागर्थः प्रतिपत्ते जगतः पितरौ वंदे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ। मैंने इस प्रार्थना में शिव और पार्वती की स्तुति की, क्योंकि उनके युक्त स्वरूप को हम लोग या हमारे किसी महर्षि ने, महाकवि कालिदास ने शब्द और उसके अर्थ के समान संपृक्त युक्ति को माना था। तो यह इस सेमिनार के लिए बड़ा उपयुक्त स्तुति हमने चुनी, जिसमें वाद विवाद भी होगा, शब्दों का अर्थ कई तरह से निकाले जाएंगे, इसलिए हमने इसको चुनी। आदरणीय सभापति महोदय, हमारे विद्वज्जन डैश के ऊपर, डैश के ऑफ, जितने सभी लोग हम लोग सुबह से एक अच्छे विषय के ऊपर विचार करने जा रहे हैं या विचार करते आ रहे हैं, बड़ा हर्ष हो रहा है। और मैं तो बाबूजोत सिंह जी की कृपा से या पता नहीं गुरु साहब की कृपा से यहाँ आने का बार बार मौका मिलता रहता है और मुझे खुशी भी होती है, बशर्ते शरीर साथ देता चले। डिग्निटी ऑफ लेबर ए रिलीजियस पर्सपेक्टिव यह विषय दिया गया और आरंभ में प्रातःकाल के समारोह में काफ़ी कुछ चर्चा हुई। धर्म के संदर्भ में ख़ासतौर से सिख धर्म के अंतर्गत जो त्रिरत्न है, नाम जपना, किरत करना और वर्ण चखना, इसकी महत्ता के संदर्भ में ही किरत के ऊपर जोर दिया गया, जो बड़ा सराहनीय रहा। हम लोग बहुत कुछ कम जानते हैं, थोड़ा बहुत तो मैंने जोत सिंह की, जैसे मैंने कहा, अनुकंपा से थोड़ी बहुत सीख ली है, या आप लोगों को सुनता रहता हूँ, यहाँ कई बार आया तो भी कुछ मेरा ज्ञान उन्मीलित हो जाता है, कुछ उसमें भर जाता है थोड़ा सा, लेकिन अभी पूर्ण हुआ नहीं। मैंने भी सोचा कि कुछ इस बारे में विचार करना चाहिए और मैंने भाषा पूछी तो अंग्रेजी का आदेश हुआ, तो इंग्लिश में ही कुछ थोड़ा बहुत लिख करके लाया हूँ, लेकिन कुछ चर्चा मिला जुला के कर लूँगा, ऐसी मेरी मान्यता है। और मेरा निबंध या वक्तव्य हिंदू धर्म के परिप्रेक्ष्य में और उसके सामाजिक, सोशल जो इवेल्युएशन है, ख़ासतौर से किरत या कर्म, श्रम, लेबर के महत्व को समझने के लिए इंगित भी किया गया, आरंभ में संकेत भी किया गया कि बहुत से धर्म ऐसे हैं, ख़ासतौर से हिंदू धर्म, जहाँ श्रम के कारण किसी को ऊंचा स्थान प्राप्त हो गया समाज में, किसी को नीचा स्थान प्राप्त हो गया, और फिर उसी के आधार पर जाति 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 के अनंत जातियाँ, यहाँ तक कि अभी भी इस युग में भी जातियाँ बनती ही जा रही हैं, कम नहीं हो रहा है। और जहाँ तक श्रम के कारण उच्चता और नीचता की बात है, वो भी अभी भी चल रहा है। लोग हिंदू धर्म की वर्ण व्यवस्था को जाति व्यवस्था के रूप में गलतफहमी बस उसको जोड़ देते हैं और इस श्रम के कारण किसी वर्ग विशेष को नीचा, दलित, उपेक्षित, हर तरह से शोषित, ऐसे ऐसे शब्द गढ़ करके उनको अपमानित करने की कोशिश पता नहीं अछूत कब से होती चली आ रही, अभी भी होती चली आ रही। आज भी हम जो उपाय सुझाते हैं उनके पुनरुत्थान के लिए, उनकी प्रगति के लिए, तो इन्हीं शब्दों को दे देते हैं। भगवान जाने पता नहीं और कोई शब्द मिलता नहीं, इंसान ही क्यों नहीं रहने दिया जाता, मनुष्य ही क्यों नहीं रहने दिया जाता, उसको जोड़ के देखते हैं। कारण भी स्पष्ट है। आज जो चर्चा हुई श्रम का मतलब हाथ से काम करना, बुद्धि से काम करना, शरीर मसल पावर जहाँ लगता हो, जहाँ शक्ति लगती हो उससे काम करना। और भी तरीके हैं श्रम के। तो आज इस टेक्नोलॉजी के ज़माने में हम जहाँ इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी के द्वारा और भी बहुत से तरीके हमने अपना लिए हैं जिसके द्वारा श्रम किए जा रहे हैं, वहाँ भी आप गौर करके देखेंगे तो कुछ वर्ग है जो अपने को सुपीरियर, कुछ इन्फीरियर समझता है। और आज के ज़माने में तो यह जीविकोपार्जन संबंधित वेतन से है, कितनी सैलरी उसकी मिलती है, कम सैलरी मिलती है तो वो कमज़ोर तो है ही, उपेक्षित है या काफ़ी नीचे है, और जिसको हायर सैलरी मिलती है वो बहुत ऊंचा है। इस टर्म में वेल्थ संग्रह के संदर्भ में ये ऊंच और नीच का भेद अभी भी बरकरार है और ये न जाने कब तक चलता रहेगा। शायद ये इंसान के अंदर जो, मैं तो गुण कहूँ कि अवगुण कहूँ, लोभ ही है, लालच ही है, नीड, आवश्यकताएं, मोर एंड मोर। एक मकान है, दो मकान, एक गाड़ी है, दो गाड़ी, एक जगह है तो दूसरी जगह। ये मोर एंड मोर की जो हमारी प्रवृत्ति है, संग्रह, बहुत अच्छा वाइस चांसलर साहब ने कहा था पटियाला यूनिवर्सिटी के, यह संग्रह की प्रवृत्ति जो है हमें मजबूर करती है कि हम अपने को समाज से कि अन्य वर्गों में विभाजित कर लें। इस संदर्भ में हमने थोड़ा सा इस पेपर में ये देखने की कोशिश की है कि आरंभ में जो हम, चूँकि मेरा संबंध हिंदू धर्म से ज़्यादा है तो उस सनातन धर्म, हिंदू धर्म के परिप्रेक्ष्य में ही मैं अपनी कुछ बातें कहूँगा, जहाँ की वर्ण व्यवस्था, आश्रम व्यवस्था का विधान किया गया और फिर उसी के आधार पर स्मृतियों का सहारा लेकर उसके इंटरप्रिटेशन को ध्यान में रख करके किसी वर्ग को ऊंचा, किसी को नीचा ऐसा माना जाने, ये एक परंपरा चल गई। वो किसी का दोष नहीं, शास्त्र का दोष नहीं, वो मनुष्य का दोष रहा कि मनुष्य अपने को कैसे अलग करता है दूसरे मनुष्य के साथ। संभवतः ऐसा पशु भी नहीं करता। वो बहुत अच्छा कहा कि सोशल एनिमल तो है, सोशल खत्म हो गया, एनिमल ही रह गया, बच गया। ये भी अच्छी बात हुई थी सुबह। तो उसी परिप्रेक्ष्य में मैं कुछ बातें कहना चाहता हूँ। तो सिख धर्म में तो बहुत अच्छी बातें बताई गई, काफ़ी कुछ किरत के संबंध में है। हिंदू धर्म में भी कर्म शब्द दिया गया, कर्म करने से, श्रम करने से दिया गया, जिसके कारण जिसकी व्याख्या अनेक तरह से हुई। सीधे शब्दों में, सिंपल शब्द में मैं एक तुलसीदास की चौपाई का एक अंश दोहराना चाहूँगा। कर्म प्रधान विश्व करि राखा, जो जस करहि सो तस फल चाखा। सिंपल है। विश्व में क्या प्रधान है? कर्म। कर्म ही मनुष्य को प्रधान गुण दिए गए, वर्चू दिया गया है। अब इसके आधार पर हम क्या बनना चाहते हैं, क्या होना चाहते हैं, क्या करना चाहते हैं, यह स्वयं अपने आप निर्धारित होता रहता है। अब ये किसका दोष है? समाज का दोष है कि व्यक्ति का दोष है कि लोभ है कि कंपटीशन है, होड़ है या प्रतियोगिता है कि हमें ऊंचा या नीचा बनने के लिए प्रेरित करती है। तो इस तरह से हमारे जीवन में यह जो सिंपल चौपाई है, ये हमारे जीवन के नियति की ओर इशारा कर रहा है कि हमारी नियति क्या है, हम क्या बनना चाहते हैं, हम क्या हासिल करना चाहते हैं, हम क्या रियलाइज़ करना चाहते हैं। यह सीधा संबंध इसके साथ है। तो इस तरह बंधुओं, मैं कुछ बातें कहना चाहूँगा। आपकी अनुमति से थोड़ी सी कुछ लाइनें मैं पढ़ दूँ, फिर आगे हिंदी में भी कुछ बातें होंगी। I have been asked to, because I have been given only 15 minutes around to sum up. I have been asked to say something on the dignity of labor in its religious perspective. Almost all the religions of the world have prescribed the importance of labor. Labor as such refers to productive human work. The ancestors in all the cultures have labored hard by the way of hunting, fishing, cutting wood, metalwork, farming, and there are so many ways, other ways, to produce livelihood materially. In nutshell, to preserve life, the only means is labor. None can survive without labor. नीति शतक एक हमारा छोटा सा ग्रंथ है आचार शास्त्र का, उसमें बहुत अच्छी बात कही गई। उद्यमे नहीं सिद्ध्यन्ति कार्याणि न मनोरथै न हि सुप्तस्य सिंहस्य प्रविशन्ति मुखे मृगा। अगर शेर सो रहा है तो उसके मुंह में अपने आप भोजन नहीं जाएगा, हिरण उसके मुंह में अपने आप नहीं जाएगा जब तक कि वह उसके ऊपर अटैक न करे, शिकार न करे, उसके लिए एफर्ट न करे, श्रम न करे। तो उद्यम से ही, परिश्रम से ही कार्य सिद्ध होगा। सोते हुए सिंह के मुख में अपने आप हिरण प्रवेश नहीं करता है। यह एक उदाहरण दे करके यह बात सिंपली समझाई गई हमारे। इट इज सेड इन द एथिकल कोड ऑफ नीति शतकम that each and every work is fulfilled by labor and not merely by desiring. As sleeping lion do not find any deer or food stuff in his mouth. That is, every work is possible only with the help of labor. The whole of the body work for gaining desired end, and Hindu scriptures describe it as purushartha. Here comes the point when we speak on purushartha. पुरुषार्थ ही हमारी रक्षा करता है, हमारी नियत को साफ करता है, हमारे लिए कर्म निर्धारित करता है। My paper proposes to deal with the religious understanding of human being as social being, which is based upon the four factors in which labor occupies an important place. Man as such is considered in relation to first Desh, place or region, second Kala, time, which constitute the historical approach to study of society, and third Shram, labor or effort, which takes into account man with reference to his natural development in the contemporary, in surrounding environment. Fourthly, the Guna, natural traits, the psychophysical qualities of human mind. A brief survey of the traditional society has to be discussed in order to understand Hindu attitude towards labor. The importance and significance of place and time, geography and history in the activities and behavior of man has been acutely recognized by the Hindu thinkers. The royal sage Rasharshi Bhishma in Mahabharata teaches us indeed that according to the conditions, demands, and exigencies of the time and place, what is otherwise dharma may become adharma, and what adharma may become dharma for the time being. Evidently, however, it is not possible to visualize and anticipate all the probable variations of the locale or desh and time or kal, which human beings are likely to be confronted with, and hence it may be said no generalizations have been attempted by Dharma Shastrakaras regarding men's conduct. Indeed, the recognition of Desh and Kala as significant factors affecting Dharma. Dharma itself is a tacit acceptance by the scholars of the fact that despite their attempts at canalizing and regulating man's conduct of life and behavior through Dharma, this is not to be taken as a rigid, static principle, but has to be allowed a certain flexibility, a modifiability, a dynamic potentiality for its operation to suit the conditions dictated by the locale and the time. And moreover, to speak of dharma itself becoming adharma and vice versa according to time and locale is really to speak of much more than just allowing the possibility of modifications in dharma. It is to ask men to be prepared for such complete and radical changes in dharma, which may even be contradictory to to the generally sanctioned dharma practices in order to suit the exigencies of the time and conditions. If the latter necessitate such changes, it is in view of the impossibility of visualizing the exigencies of the locale and time that the thinkers have not attempted to dwell on dharma of desh and kal, while the dharma of shram and guna have been discussed by them. And so I have attempted to make an investigation into the Hindu social thought. Here we may note that in substance all the Hindu sages agree that any plan or scheme of social organization which aims at the best function of human being, a social unit, must in the first instance take him into account from these two aspects. First, it must be considered man as a social being with reference to his training and development in the natural and social environment in order to enable him to fulfill the final aim of his existence. And secondly, this has to be coordinated with another scheme which studies man with reference to his natural endowment, dispositions and attitude. The first is concerned with ashram and second with varnas. The two organizations of ashrama and varnashram vyavastha, which to put it briefly, refer to the problem of nature of man rightly, serve as the cornerstone of the Hindu theory of social organization. And we may also note here that the scheme of ashram as thought out and devised by the Hindu is a unique contribution in the whole history of social thought of the world, without even a parallel to it in any other thought system, excepting perhaps to some extent in Plato's Republic. The same may be said to be true to a great extent of the Varna organization also. Here lies, broadly speaking, what appears to be one of the main distinctions between Hindu way of understanding, tackling and solving the social problem and the Western way. In the West, generally speaking, the social sciences as such of today are mainly built up straight in terms of relation between man and between man and his environment. Rarely the social scientists take into consideration the more fundamental questions of the ultimate human values, of the ultimate aim and the fulfillment of man's existence, of the basic social philosophy which does and should govern the superstructure of social practices, conduct and the institution, and take such basic ideas and concepts as the starting point in his discussion. This is particularly true of the social scientists who are working in the field of economics and politics. And it is also true to a considerable extent of even those who are working in the field of general sociology, barring very rare exceptions like P. Sorokin, who is now considered to be out of fashion in the sociological circle in his country by some of his colleagues just because he is interested in such problem of course. Some sort of social philosophy will always be found implicitly underlying any sociological discussions, but it is not given a conscious and deliberate consideration. It is not explicitly discussed and taken as the basic starting point in the modern treatise on the social organization. Modern social scientists, who are social scientists in general, are on the contrary inclined to consider such questions of ultimate values of more or less speculative nature or metaphysical interest. On the other hand, they concern themselves directly with actual and factual interactions between man and between man and his environment. In sharp contrast with such attitude, the Hindu, in his academic discussion of social life and practice, first raised the fundamental questions of the significance of man consecration to basic questions of the relation between man and the possible ultimate purpose to life. The whole of the life of an individual is for the Hindu a kind of schooling, a self-discipline. Now, during the course of this schooling, he has to pass through 4 stages, which is called now as ashramas of life, ashram vyavastha. In order to understand the psychomoral basis of ashram proper, it is advisable that we should look into the theory of purusharthas, which concern themselves with the understanding, management, and conduct of affairs and individual's life in relation to the group. in and through the ashramas. Purusharthas are four, as we know, dharma, artha, kama and moksha. We speak of these purusharthas as the psycho-moral basis of the ashram theory, because on the one hand, the individual receives a psychological training through the ashram in terms of lessons in the use and the management of the purusharthas, while on the other hand, in actual practice, he has to deal with the society in accordance with these lessons. It is in the light of the understanding of the meaning and place of the human values. Dharma is so called because it protects dharnat all. Dharma preserves all that is created. Dharma then is surely the principle which is capable of preserving the universe. Artha, on the other hand, is to be understood as referring to all the means necessary for acquiring worldly prosperity, such as wealth and power, and Kam refers to all the desires in man for enjoyment and satisfaction of life for the senses, including the sex drive, to which the word Kam more prominently refers. The term refers to the native impulses, instincts and desires of man, his natural mental tendencies, and finds its equivalent, we may say, in the use of the English term desire, needs, basic and primary motives, urges and drives, and all the collective use of the term kama would refer to the totality of the innate desires and drives of man. The term is also often used in a broader sense to include socially acquired motivation too. Dharma, artha and kam therefore refer respectively to the moral, material and mental resources necessary and energies available to man. Of these three, artha and kam refer to the two of the man's earthly belongings, while the dharma stands on a higher level at its lowest level of the manifestation. Kam is understood in the sense of pure sex drive and is said to be one of the 6 enemies of the human being. But it is equally true that a human being cannot conduct his life without artha, which constitutes the material means of living, and kam, which helps the propagation of the species. Therefore, it is needed that the correct quality and quantity, the place and time of artha and kam have to be determined and laid down by the wise sages. This is done in terms of dharma, which defines for man the proper quantum, place and season for the right functioning of artha and kam. By attending his dharma, therefore, a person is able to live a proper life even though it may be lived in terms of artha and kama. Here, it is to be remembered that when we refer to artha and kama as purusartha, we refer to them in their proper proportions. That is to say, only in the best sense of these words. Artha refers to problem activities connected with the finding, making, gathering, conserving, organizing the material necessities of life and all that accompanies the same. Similarly, kama refers to the sex and the reproductive aspect, its understanding, its right functions. Dharma is therefore the holder of the balance in terms of which artha kam have to be built, the wage, practices and the apportioned. Now, let us turn to the theory and practice of the ashram proper. The word ashram is originally derived from the Sanskrit root shrama, so therefore it may means by derivation a place where exertions are performed and the action of the performing such exertions. Literally, an ashram is a halting or resting place. This for the sake of rest in a sense, in order to prepare oneself for further journey. Ashrama then are to be regarded as a resting place during one's journey on the way of final liberation, which is the final aim of life. The 4 stages of life, says Vyasa in Mahabharata, form a ladder or a flight of 4 steps. That flight attaches to Brahman. But by ascending the flight, one reaches the region of Brahman, whichever of the above be the original meaning of the word. The historical development of ashram scheme as an institution and the social implication within it included all the interpretations given above. Each of the ashram is a stage of life in which the individual has to train himself for a certain period and exert himself with the circuit of scheme, same in order to qualify himself for the next. Among all the ashramas, householder stage, grihastha, is of much importance because it gives us an opportunity to work not for oneself, but for a family, for a group, for a society, and for the nation, and as well for the whole world. All the productive works are performed at the stage where labor is needed. Therefore, it is said that Grihasth ashram is the most superior stage. The important discussion will be devoted to understanding the meaning of this labor. By labor is meant the application of muscle strength in order to produce of the fulfillment of the needs, and the needs are never satisfied. It depends upon the man's unending desire to gain more and more. To this effect, the problem of desire has to be dealt. Is a religious phenomena, social phenomena, or economic one which inspires the motivation man has to involve oneself in labor. Varnashram Vyavastha, Brahmanical system of classical India, gave us a system of the classification of labor based upon occupation. No doubt, each occupation requires certain amount of labor, may it be mental, psychological, physical, or in other words, cognitive, action-oriented, or emotional. The focus should be made on the present affair of the attitude towards labor. The Sanatana tradition of Hinduism has to be reinterpreted critically because it has given rise to the pure and impure categories due to their occupation. This has caused the discrimination between man and woman. The notion of untouchable, deprived class grew gradually. This has been a sad picture of Hindu society. Mr. Uday Kumar Verma has commented upon that the essay written by Chitra Joshi, Labor, History and Question of Culture. She attempts to understand the shifts in recent decades in the analytical paradigm to examine the question of culture in writing on labor and to inquire the determinants of these temporal deviations. Further, it is attempted to delineate and the limits and the possibility of studying working class culture. Through a coherent discussion on the trends in writing on labor in India, the author establishes that till recently, family, gender, and the other issues concerning the lives of the working class were not the central concern in labor historiography. Notwithstanding this, the author is of the view that over the last decades and a half, there is discernible revival in the labor history writing in the country. So many literatures are found in this context. The labor has economic significance due to the advancements of technology and the democratic values. Labor is to be understood as a humble and dignified form of human behavior. On the cost of labor, no person can claim to be privileged one and the others and deprived one. Lastly, morality and work culture is to be discussed by us. But I have not dealt so much in the long. Hence, the conclusion is based on the Karma Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita to serve not only oneself but to other for the fulfillment of human destiny. It is well said, Yastu Indriyani Manasa Niyamarambhya Arjuna Karmendriye Karma Yogam Asakta Sa Visheshate. If a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins Karma Yoga, he is by far superior. The teaching of the Gita supports the view that person engaged in activities cannot claim as right to be superior. It is mindset which makes one superior or lower. Therefore, Gita says, Niyatam kur karma jayo hi karmana sarir yatra pi chate na prasiddhet akarmana. It is said that one should perform the prescribed duty. For doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Such is the view of the Hinduism in respect of labor. Professor Niharanjan Rai, I have one from the book, The Sikh Gurus and Sikh Society. He has written, the Bhagavad Gita seems to be the only document of the classical India that is somewhat forthright its acceptance of these demands, duties and obligations, and the human individual to the time and space which he belongs to. This is from the Niharanjan Rai's interpretation. But in the end, I would like to conclude my paper by saying the Gita's teaching of yoga, karmasu kausalam, a skilled work, is the perfect yoga. If one wants to realize the highest destiny by the means of yoga, yoga's karmasu kaushalam. The skilled work has to be adopted by everybody, and one should be engaged in the work. And Gandhi's, here I should remember Gandhi's vows, where he has referred for bread labor. I should not eat if I have not done any work by our hands. That is the meaning of the bread labor. One should work for his bread and butter. Thank you very much. I am closing.